Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Doherty. I am blessed to be the President and CEO of Center of Workforce Innovations and Work One. We have an exciting presentation for you. Some of us had dinner with our featured speaker, Sophie, last night, and I could listen to her talk all day. I think you'll be very impressed and excited about what you hear. So, shift happens. Don't you love that? Thank you, Barb, for that. So, the workforce, it's shifted. Literally tens of thousands of people in Northwest Indiana have opted out of the labor force in the last couple of years, and for a host of reasons. Many. Workers are demanding more from their employers because they can. Many workers need to be upskilled in order to meet employer needs now and in the future. Economic development professionals, where are you? I know I saw a couple of you here. Yes. They're working hard to bring new jobs to Northwest Indiana, but those businesses are worried about whether we have the workforce here in Northwest Indiana to ensure that their business thrives. Employers, you know this, you're competing for talent to an extent you've never seen before. These are serious challenges. Now, I've always seen challenges as opportunities. And I've always run toward the barking dog. Okay? Donna's smiling. You must know me. Did you meet me? I want everyone in the room to know that Center of Workforce Innovations and our partners are stepping up to meet this challenge that is here in Northwest Indiana. We're starting by bringing this series to you to raise awareness, to stimulate thought and new ideas, to hear changes and strategies that other businesses are implementing and they're working. And then we intend to engage and mobilize the entire system, which includes you. Training providers, educators, community organizations, because they're working so closely with the residents in the community. And we're going to work collectively, not separately, to coordinate our efforts, our networks, our services, our resources, to intentionally create accelerated pathways to training, to jobs, your jobs, that are available. Together, we can raise up and expand the workforce to meet your needs. Center of Workforce Innovations, the Northwest Indiana Workforce Board, and Work One have been helping businesses solve their workforce challenges for years. I feel like we've been quiet and humble about that. And we're not going to be that anymore. We're going to be bold and aggressive. We are the public workforce system in Northwest Indiana, and that means that we're here to serve you. Center of Workforce Innovations and Work One employees. Can you please stand for me? Center of Workforce Innovations, Work One employees. Northwest Indiana Workforce Board and CWI board members, please stand if you don't mind. Oh, you guys, you weren't supposed to sit down. That's okay. So no, we are here to serve you. If you're an employer and you've never worked with us before, you must know that we have resources and funding to help you promote your open jobs, match job seekers to those openings, and train current and new employees. If you worked with us in the past, but you haven't lately, try us again. We've made a lot of changes internally to be more inclusive and responsive to your needs. I am incredibly grateful to our sponsors, and you see them here. Actually, Alverno Labs joined us, not in time for the banner, but Alverno Labs is a series sponsor. Ivy Tech, credible partner, helping us work to get people trained and into better paying jobs. NIPSCO, now NIPSCO, we had a table for you, but you're in different places. Thank you, always a great partner in the community. And Purdue Northwest, thank you. We couldn't do this without the support of those organizations. And last, but certainly not least, a very deep and heartfelt thank you to the Times Media Company, sitting here in front. You have leaned in all the way with us on this, and you've come to the table as a presenting sponsor, and I really just can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. Tom Shager, would you mind joining me up on the stage to say a few words? You know, the Times is an incredible partner and an asset to this community. I appreciate everything that this team does to elevate important issues and work that's being done in the community because it makes Northwest Indiana better.
Good morning, and thank you for coming here. So, yes, we are all in on supporting this series because could you imagine for a second saying no to Lisa? Could you imagine? You know, it's really amazing when we initially sat down with Lisa to talk about a lot of the issues that we're seeing in Northwest Indiana. And it was very clear that she pointed out that there is not a shortage of opportunities in Northwest Indiana as it relates to job openings and career choices. But there is an extreme shortage of people to fill those positions, and that's not going to get solved anytime soon. That gap creates an opportunity for everybody to think differently about how to go about solving some of these daunting issues that face the marketplace. And when I think about the way that Lisa has, in a short amount of time, approached what is a very challenging issue for the region, it's easy to see that she is enacting a culture and a way of thinking that really embodies what we're looking to accomplish with the Innovation Series. So innovation is very simply defined as, and I wrote it down, a new idea, method, or device. Simple. Simple. What's so hard about that? Except everybody knows who has been attached or seen innovation that there's an incredible amount of work, a different way of thinking, a commitment, a change in leadership culture, and the end result then can be innovation. Well, we're very fortunate today to hear from Sophie, who has devoted a career around the globe to a different way of thinking, to a different approach. There's been a lot of hard work along the way in really sharing a lot of different ideas over the course of many years. And so we will be the beneficiary of a lot of that today. So as Lisa mentioned, we're very proud to be a part of this series, and we are committed to it. And all of the partners, Alverno, Ivy Tech, PNW, and NIPSCO, very proud to bring this to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, are you ready for the featured speaker? Sophie Wade is the founder and workforce innovation specialist at Flexcell Network. She helps companies transform and future-proof their work environments by helping them create compelling, progressive, talent-focused, and digitally integrated workplaces. She is an authority, and I promise you she is, on the wide-ranging future of work issues impacting companies and workers' new demands, such as attracting, engaging, and retaining talent, digital transformation, managing distributed workers, workplace flexibility, intergenerational communication. We always have issues with that, right? I learned that in my first management role. And new career paradigms. Her expertise led her to author a book entitled Embracing Progress, Next Steps for the Future of Work. Sophie provides consulting to corporations to maximize the benefits and minimize the disruption in their transition to the new work environments. She helps employees and independent workers adapt and start proactively managing their new lattice corporate or diversified independent careers. It's always a mouthful. She has lived and worked in Asia, Europe, and the US with a strategy and finance focus. Her career has been spent assisting entrepreneurs and major corporations identify, develop, and execute strategic initiatives, build teams and ventures, and create partnerships. She's a former president of the New York City chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners. Sophie has a BA from Oxford University in Oriental Studies and an MBA from International Business School in INSEAD. Did I say that correctly? INCSEAD. Please join me in welcoming Sophie Wade. And I just want to say while she's walking up here that last night she made it perfectly clear that she's going to share a wealth of information, but she also wants to take questions from you at the end, so don't be shy. Sophie.
Thank you. So you can hear me? You got the mic? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lisa, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And yes, please be thinking of your questions all the way through, because I really, answering specific questions that relate to anything that I have said and beyond, things that I haven't talked about, is really critical to understanding how it affects every single one of you in your organizations, and as employees as well as employers. So this is, as Lisa said, there's a paradigm shift. This is a really important moment to be thinking about the future of work and what's next. But there are three things I want to unpack first. What is the future of work? When did it arrive? And what's next? So I love this picture, because it really visually sums up the future of work for me. It is location independent in many cases. There are multiple devices going on. There's time pressure, extraordinary flexibility, and it looks very different to what we're used to. But there are lots of different ways that we are all experiencing the future of work in our daily lives. A month ago, I was actually in the UK for work, and I visited my father and stepmother. But I woke up in the morning, about 7 o'clock, and I had this excruciating pain in my back. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I mean, I don't think it's bad enough to go to the ER, and I'd be spending, hours there. And I need to take the train into London at 9:30 and have a whole bunch of meetings. So I spoke with my stepmother. She gave me a website, which was sort of online medical services. And I put my information in, and I paid £5, like $6. And so there was initial sort of back and forth, and they said, yes, we think you need to have a consultation with a doctor. So I paid £35 more, about $45. And within half an hour, I was on the phone having a really great conversation with the doctor, trying to work out what I needed. And he said, I think you just need to, pain reliever, and you'll be on your way. And I was. I got my 9:30 train, and I had my meetings. And I don't know if he was in his pajamas or not. It doesn't matter. I mean, he was able to do his work on the phone for me. I got my work done. That's part of the future of work. And there are other ways that we're experiencing. For example, drones. Drones are now, and robots are now part of delivery teams, whether it's delivering pharmaceuticals or going out to rural communities and being able to deliver supplies, as well as helping spray crops. A friend of mine is an architect in New York, and when they're doing the repointing and sort of checking on the building facades, they're now using drones to do that rather than having workers scale up ladders on scaffolding, which is much safer and quicker. We have people who are using sophisticated production tools, who are being able to create video content and spread it, as well as being influencers who are promoting products and earning revenues that way. We have smart speakers who are turning on our lights or putting on music. I have a problem with mine. It doesn't understand my accent, so that's me at the end arguing with it about what it's trying to play. But anyway, but it does help me, remind me about ordering my dog food. It gets the dog food in, as well as delivering products to me or food to me, so I can cook something up at the end of a long day working at home. I'm not always working from home, but the technology is now allowing us to work in different ways and explore and utilize different work arrangements that are allowing us to do our best work, allowing your employees and your teams to do their best work. These are all different elements of the future of work, because the future of work is technology-driven. It is a highly connected, digitalized business and work environment. And it's allowing to work in very, very different ways. So when did it arrive? Well, through a cascade of technology implementations with the pandemic. When coronavirus restrictions came into place, we had to work differently, and we integrated all kinds of platforms and applications. And it was to connect with people who are working from home, as well as help automate handoffs so that we weren't handing pieces of paper, and really helping keep people safe. There were all kinds of things that we were doing to really change the dynamic. And it allowed us to work in different ways and have sophisticated tools and have different processes because of the technologies that we were using. But also, with those different technologies that were changing customer behaviors, because also, we were changing our behaviors. We were living very differently, living our lives very differently, whether we were on the front line or we were working from home. And that meant that we couldn't predict as far ahead. We were trying to work out how we were going to be surviving, the next month, the 6 months from now. But it also means that we can't really now project out farther than 3 years at best. We have some sense, but not a long sense. Because part of that is not only that we as customers are changing our behaviors, but also customers, ourselves, we can talk back. And that customer feedback loop, we're having to respond. Now, when I actually try and find the phone number on a website, it's not that easy to find, which is very frustrating, because we have to respond to our customers, and we have to upgrade, and we have to change and adapt. And that is meaning, think about how many, in Zoom, how many changes happened over the last 2 years in terms of features. You went, oh, that wasn't there before. That's interesting. But the changes, for example, in Zoom, in terms of the integration, in December 2019, there were 10 million active Zoom users. In May 2020, there were 200 million. In June, there were 300 million. Like, these are the types of changes in the Internet of Things, the billions of things that are interconnected. It's been changing dramatically. So this lack of predictability, this incredible information flow that we're having to deal with and having to adapt to, well, that is also we have to think about the other side of the future of work. There's the technology-driven portion of it, and there's also us. We are the ones who are using these tools and using this technology and having greater capabilities. And what are we doing with that? We're having to solve more complicated problems. And we're having to work across disciplines, across different divisions, marketing, business development, IT, all working together to solve these different problems. And we're working together in teams on projects of different sizes and different lengths. And that's a new thing. The Harvard Business Review November-December issue announced the project economy has arrived. Projects and the percentage, it talked about Germany, that 41% of Germany's GDP in 2019 was project-based. We've been used to linear, static ways of working, and now it is much more about teams. And that means we're having to work together in ways that we never did before, under pressure, at a faster pace, with so much unpredictability. The bar has been raised. So, what's next? We're not going back. In fact, there is no back to go back to. Let's be clear about that. But if this is what we think it was, the sun was shining, we were all having a great time, let's focus. That's rosy-colored spectacles. Come on. This is more what it looked like. And whether we're constrained at home or we were constrained in the office, that was not the best way for most people to be working all the time. We also weren't feeling valued or heard. And so many people were not engaged. I think we managed to get to 32% of employees who were engaged. Woohoo! You know, that's not great. Not now that the bar has been raised. And we need people to be engaged in their work, because just them turning up and going through the motions is not going to cut it. Something happened there. Oh, I'm not going to stand over there. Okay. So it's not going to cut it. So what do? We also think about the fact that many businesses have moved on. So Netflix and, well, the studios, in fact, they want to get everybody back into the movie theaters. But they're recognizing that people, particularly younger folks, are not going to, they want to watch it on the streaming services. So the window has now changed, and particularly with younger audiences, the movies are going to be streamed on their services in much shorter time frames. We also see, I've traveled, actually done a lot of flying over the last 2 years, and there was a lot of flexibility. Airlines cancel flights on me all the time. But they gave me a lot of flexibility to change my flights, and a lot of that flexibility is still in there, because we're working together in more flexible ways, because that's what we need. And of course, when we have a look at the office space and how people are rethinking how they're using their offices, we can talk about hub and club in terms of what offices are really great for. People getting together to connect and having those moments together and collaborating. And there are lots of different companies are working in different ways and looking at how they're going to be adapting for their particular workforce. Every company is different. Some companies have gone Vistaprint, now called Vista, 7,000 people, gone fully remote. And they're not going to go back. I talked to the CEO. They do have some collaboration centers where sort of people can book in and sort of have collaboration sessions. But everybody's different. In fact, Mary Barrow is my favorite, the CEO of GM, who came up with a dress code in April 2020, which was dress appropriately. And her workplace policy, so she didn't have to write 200 pages for their workplace policy in May 2021, was work appropriately. You're adults, you work it out, do the right thing. So, we're not going to uninstall those applications. We're not going to take out the technology that we've integrated, because we need that flexibility. We need to be able to use that storage, the documents that's stored in the cloud, so when they're traveling, we can really easily access the information that we need and be able to work from everywhere we need to work. This is where we're going, because we understand that that's what we need to engage our employees so that they can work effectively wherever they are, employees and non-employees, the extended talent pool that we have. So we're not going back, because the world has already moved on. So what do we want? Well, this is what we want, right? I don't know who's gone ziplining. Anybody gone ziplining here? Right, okay. So my son was about, I think, 12. We went to visit my sister in Scotland. And he goes, I want to go ziplining. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm game for whatever. Then before I know it, I'm 30 feet up a tree. And I'm on this, and we do this tiny zip line. He's already disappeared. Like, he's gone. And I'm standing there on this tiny thing, and I can't go back because it won't go up. And I have to go forward. And there are these, you know, like these wooden things, and you like step out, and you're going like this, and going like that, oh my God. And there's a wire, and you hope to goodness that that's actually going to save you should you fall, right? But you're not sure. So I step out, and my heart is in my mouth. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I thought I'd be anyway, so out I go, whatever, and I get to the next station, and the trunk of the tree trunk, and I hold onto the trunk for dear life. And oh my God. Anyway, I do it. I manage to do it. The next one, I step out, and the wood things and the cylinders, and they're going in a slightly different way. But I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting through this. I'm managing to do it. And I don't have to hold on to the next tree trunk as much. I'm starting to work out how to deal with it. And by the time I've done the third and fourth section, I'm actually getting the hang of it. And by the time I get to the fifth one, I'm like, okay, let's just see what this one's going to do. I got this. We have had extraordinary, really challenging, extreme conditions that were thrown at us in March 2020. And think how we rallied. Oh my goodness, you would never have thought that that was possible, what we were able to do. It wasn't all easy at all, but we did it. And now, the extreme conditions are much less. It's still dynamic, but the volatility, the incredible change we're having to deal with is much better. And we understand how to deal with change. We understand the kind of flexibility that we need to incorporate into our daily lives. And we have contingency plans in our top drawer that are ready to go just in case, whether it's a variant or our competitor integrates new technology which changes customer behaviors, which then impacts us. Also, during the last 2 years, we've learned a lot about ourselves and about each other. We learned what kind of conditions did and didn't work for us, the kind of isolation that was challenging, how much we wanted and needed to be connecting with other people, and how we were going to do that. We also saw into each other's lives. And we saw the challenges, and we heard the dogs barking and the kids that came running and tugging at people's shirt tails when they were sitting there, or maybe their pajama bottoms, as I say, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But we saw all of that, and we learned, we actually became better leaders and managers and teammates as a result, because we were understanding more dimensions. It was no longer that two-dimensional cutout that we were sort of bringing toward the office. We actually saw much more of each other. And that was a much better experience. We had to get used to it, but we understand that much more about where we are and where we need to go. So where are we going? We are going to finish what we started. Or better put, we're going to continue the trajectory that we have been on. We didn't necessarily know that, but we have been, what we do best is we invent, we imagine, we come up with all kinds of extraordinary inventions, as Tom was saying. That's what we do well. And whatever invention we come up with, whether it's the plane so we can go further and come back faster, the fridge so that we can actually don't have to shop every single day, or the telephone, and the different phases of the telephone and what it enables us to do, we then adapt, and we adapt to our lives accordingly, and we change our behaviors accordingly. And there also have been, in addition to technology, have been societal changes that have really also been driving how we adapt to the future of work. Because, for example, after the Second World War, there was a golden age. We had incredible economic boom, and one person, in the 60s, 67% of families had one person who needed to work outside the home in order to buy a house and have everybody be able to have a reasonable life. That's not the case. 66% of US families in 2020 had, with children, 66%, both parents were working. You need different types of flexibility in order to make that work. In the US, 40% of American mothers are the sole or primary breadwinner. And we're living longer, and we're needing to extend retirement. We're needing to push it out so that our savings don't get used up. These are very different dynamics in the workforce than when we came up with the rules. And we came up with the rules, 100 years ago when things were very, very different, and they weren't divine. We were the people kind of people just like us who made them up, so we can make up new rules. This question is the first question that I came up with when I was writing this speech, but actually it's this. What are the necessities? How do we need to change in order to be able to adapt for what's ahead? Uber is a really interesting example to me, which I actually use in the book, my first book. I have a new one coming out, but my first book, because it really turned things around and stood them on the head and thought about first principles. Because if you were living in New York, which is where I live, if you were living in New York and it was the middle of the afternoon when the taxi shifts changed and it was raining and you had big bags, you couldn't take the subway to the airport, you couldn't get a cab, not to save your life. Uber thought about it differently and said, instead of it being the taxi drivers and sort of the powers in their hands, how about the consumer? If they could actually access all the different cars that are around in the reasonable vicinity, in the reasonable radius, what about if they could access them and find them and those people could be connected? That's an interesting idea. So if you think about your business differently, because you can, because the technologies are out there, and you think about what are the different ways that we could actually be doing this? And the pandemic actually gave us new ways of thinking about our businesses. So the pandemic is actually, these last 2 years, have given us enormous learnings to be thinking differently. That Tom was talking about in terms of the mindset. It's a huge mindset shift that we need in order to make the changes necessary. And in tandem with the different technologies that we can use, how we're updating our experiences. Because it is those old ways of working, those old rigid ways of working, those are what have been causing people to leave. They don't want to go back to working like that. And it doesn't make sense. It's actually not logical. If we can work differently, if we can use the technologies, the extraordinary technologies that we have, why aren't we? And if you're at an organization, you're sort of saying, well, we could do it like this, and we could do it like that, and that could be really interesting. And an employer is saying, no. It's like when you were 5 and your mom said, or your dad said, no, and just because I told you so. It's not a great answer. So how can we be adapting to make sure that we can attract the right people? We have the technologies in place which young people are going to go, okay, this is a competitive organization. I understand that they have the technologies to succeed. And to engage them so that we meet that higher level, so that they really engage in their work. They're sort of aligned with their skills and they're doing their best work. Those are the things that we need to do, and we can. So what's next for your organization? This is a scary word, I know. But transformation, we have this moment right now because we actually have to come up with new ways forward. Because the back isn't there to go back to, and we're coming out of the pandemic and we can think about things differently because things have changed. So how are you going to do it? And that really is transformation. And it can be done in increments, but it does require some sort of thinking outside the box to begin with. So I look at first of all, the enterprise, the business that you're in, then looking at the environment, and then individually the employee. Because all of these are what's going to be needed to make sure that you can really adapt your organization and keep those employees and retain and attract new employees, the ones that you need. So first of all, who is your customer now? Because they may be very different from how they were before. And they may behave very differently if they are the same person. Jeremy Fleming is the CEO of Stage Kings, an Australian theatre set and event staging company. They used to make huge stages for like a Miley Cyrus concert or huge sporting events. And they even did a replica of the Edinburgh Castle, which I think is what they've made here. So Monday, March 13th, 2020, the Australian Prime Minister said all events of over 100 people are prohibited until further notice. No theatre, all entertainment was shut down as well. He was devastated for his company. And within a couple of days, they tried everything, but they couldn't come up with any solutions. He had to let his 23 employees go. But he wasn't going to give up, and so over that weekend, he was talking to a former employee in Ireland who also had an event business, who was also trying to work out what to do. And he said, well, hang on a second, you've got the craftspeople, skills craftspeople, you've got the amazing, the specific machinery, and you've got the materials. What about making desks? I mean, there are all these people who need desks, they're working from home, and there's no inventory, everything is sold out. So he talked to Mike, who is his sort of key guy who did a lot of the design for the events. And he said, well, why don't you come up with desks? Can you come up with some prototypes? So on Monday morning, so a week later, Mike has designed 2 desks and printed out a 3D print of one prototype. And the really cool thing about these desks is that they were not only utilizing the different skills, but they were flat packed. So when you pulled them out of the box, you slotted them together. You didn't need any screws or bolts or whatever. So you could undo them. You could disassemble them at the end of the day, flat pack them, put them under the bed or in the closet. Genius. Monday night, Jeremy's wife, who's a partner in his business, she throws up an e-commerce site. Tuesday, he appeals to social media and says, I'm trying to re-employ my 23 employees. 1 million people see that. They've sold 100 desks by the end of the week and 10,000 by the end of 3 months. ISO Kings is now a parallel division to Stage Kings because, and this is the interesting to think about going forward, he doesn't want to only have to rely on one type of business. So he has different revenue streams and different customers. And they don't just make desks, they make beds and furniture and shelving. It's really cool. And he's also vertically integrating in the Stage King business because he also doesn't want to deal with the supply chain disruptions in the same way. So he's actually originally a scaffolder, and so he's bought a small scaffolding business to vertically integrate. So that's the way he's approached this. And that's the way he's moving forward, thinking about his business very differently and who his customers are. This is a UK company, Pizza Pilgrims. They had the best revenue week ever in February 2020. Two young men, Tom and James Elliott. And they had 13 outlets. But when it shut down in March 2020, in fact, in the UK, when you get furloughed, you actually get about 80% of your salary still. But as you probably know, in the restaurant business, people have to rely on their base salaries, which are much lower, and they rely on the tips in order to supplement their incomes. So they wanted to try and get people, back working again, so they could give them the full salaries. So they came up with the idea of pizza in the post, in the mail. Crazy idea. And it took them a couple of weeks to be sending the fresh ingredients that people could put together, and they would, they'd send it and end up in pizza soup. But after 2 weeks, they sorted it out, threw up an e-commerce site, and they had 50 kits to sell. In 20 seconds, those sold out. And the next day, they had another 50 kits. In 20 seconds, those sold out. And very soon, they had a back order of about 3 weeks. But the interesting thing about this is that they worked along their supply chain because they said, we don't know how we're going to do this. Will you work with us to make this happen? We don't know how we need the supplies. We don't know how we're going to pay you because we're just still trying to figure it out. But they worked along the supply chain with everybody, and everybody made it work. And they are continuing the pizza in the post as we move forward because they recognize that more people are going to be working from home and wanting not just to have frozen pizzas, but also to be able to, we had a lot of bread breaking, right? So now people are wanting to also keep making fresh pizza at home. So there are lots of different ways that you can be thinking about your business. And, did I show you that? This is what it looks like. So cool. And they actually had these sort of rolls of fresh sheep's wool that they put on. Really ingenious. So when you're thinking about your business, design in terms of the enterprise, design, define, and refine. And the key thing is really being able to take a step back. Being able to take a step back. And I don't mean long strategy sessions. I mean bringing together a diverse team from your organization across and different generations, all different types of perspective. Bringing everybody together to think differently and have suggestions. There are lots of people in your organization who have lots of ideas about how you could do things differently. They've been thinking about it over the last 2 years and before, about new ideas that could be really innovative, that could change the game for you. So it doesn't have to be a huge amount of work, but it does require a new mindset to really bring all those things together. And then defining how it's going to happen. Because when people are working differently, when we're working at a faster pace, when we're working many different locations, and we have to deal with contingencies and changing plans, we need to understand the specifics of how we're working. So really being clear. When we're all in the same office, It could be a little bit loosey-goosey. You could shout across the cubicles, hey, have you done that? But now we're dealing in a way and working at a pace that we need to be much more specific and define how work works. And Lisa and I were talking about that last night. How is really important. And defining what that means and what's going to be the optimal way to do that for your organization, for your business, and your employees. And then refining it. Because we're not going to, just like flexible work models, hybrid, we have to keep iterating to get it right. We're all very different people. All our organizations are different. And so whatever hybrid model works for your organization, whatever configuration is going to be right for yours is going to be different from somebody else's. How you've integrated the technology, where people live, what their commute times are. All these different things need to be taken into account. The environment. This is critical. To create the environment that's going to be engaging your employees and attracting them. I was talking to Kimmy Wernley, who is the CEO and owner of Crazy Rich's Peanut Butter. And she took over as owner and running the business, I think 2014, something like that. And she sat everybody, the senior executives down, and she said, I want to really focus on our cultural values. I want to be sure that we know who we are and what we stand for. And I want us to be agreed on this. Okay. They sat down, took about 2 months to get it to where she was comfortable with that. And they were all comfortable, because everybody needs to be on board. And then she said, and I actually also want everybody along our supply chain, including our retailers, our wholesalers, and along to the manufacturing, I want everybody to be aligned. And if they're not aligned, we need to let them go. Now that got some pushback in her organization, because it's like some people say, well, hang on a second, if those are revenue generating relationships, or we've been in business with them for a long time, why? She said, I hear you, I understand, but it's really important to me because the relationships that we have, the aligned values are more important than any terms of any contract. So what happens when the pandemic hits is, as anybody in manufacturing knows, you couldn't have as many people in the factory doing the manufacturing. You had to have people spaced out. Also, when it came to how many pallets could be loaded on a day, because people had to be spaced out to be safe. The handoffs need to be automated. There were lots and lots of hindrances all the way along, going from the manufacturing all the way to the retail distribution. And they all wanted to get those products, that peanut butter, a staple product, on those shelves. And so they all worked together, and they all took a hit. It wasn't a question of one company wanting to maximize their money for what they were doing. And every single person absorbed a portion of it. They all worked together. And that's what we're finding now in terms of when we continue to deal with supply chain disruption. We're all needing to work much closer together, because all our businesses are changing, or everybody is pivoting, and we need to really understand that and be working together so that we can adapt together. These challenges are there, but as Lisa said, they're also opportunities, and I see challenges in the same way. They are opportunities to do things differently. So culture becomes really important. Sorry, that was Kimmy Wernley's thing. So culture becomes really important in terms of the foundation and how you're actually connecting people and creating a community, a sense of belonging between everybody who is in your organization. And culture may not have mattered in the past when things were easier, when we didn't have to really be connecting and we weren't so dispersed. And we weren't having to work at such a fast pace, but now we are. So culture and having trust-based relationships between employees, between leaders and your teams, these become that much more important to create that sense of belonging so people can really contribute. They feel safe opening up and communicating openly and sharing the information that they have, and sharing the concerns they have, rather than covering up an issue that they see, but bringing all their ideas. This is going to be critical, bringing all their ideas. Whatever place they are in the organization, the young people too, who are sharing some of the ideas they have about technology. This is really important. And collaborating. As I said, we're working in teams, we're working on projects. And how we work together is going to be incredibly important as we're trying to make sure that we can offer those new upgrades to customers as quickly as possible. So lastly, in the employee. So when I talk about tailoring, I'm really thinking about understanding each employee individually And that may seem like a lot of work, but it can be done on a team-by-team basis, a manager with their team. Because you actually do already adjust for people. You know, it may be Mark who is just not awake at 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning. So shift the meeting to 10, because otherwise you're not going to get the best out of Mark. Like adapting for people's preferences, adapting so that they can do their best work. Maybe that's working from home on a particular project, because that's going to be the best place that they can focus. There are all kinds of ways that you can adapt, and they can be very small. I was sharing last night about a software company that the woman just needed half an hour difference in being able, so that she could come in half an hour later, so she could put her 2 kids on the bus to school. That was it, half an hour, that's all she needed. So when you ask employees what they really need, and that's what's going to make a difference to them, to how they're working, how much they can focus on their work, whether it's picking up the kids or dealing with elder care, there are lots of things that can be done which are going to make all the difference in the world to them. And when they understand that that's the mindset of the people they're working with, that's the kind of company that they want to work for. And another piece of it is development. Because think about it, 30-year careers at one company don't exist anymore. Although I was talking to 2 people last night who did. But for the youth and they're coming in, they know that those careers don't exist. Because companies need to be flexible. They can't promise or imagine that somebody's going to be there for that long. Now, what that means is that if I join your organization, do I believe that you're going to nurture my skills? You're going to help me stay competitive, which is going to be good for your business, and it's going to be good for me, because that's what I need to feel that I'm going to be secure financially. I'm going to have the skills that I need in this changing environment where we need to keep learning, we need to keep upskilling. I'm going to need to do that, and is my employer going to help me do that? Because otherwise, why would I stay at your company? Why would I join your company? This is critical. So the training, the upskilling, thinking about the careers. And careers are no longer vertical. They can go sideways. They can go diagonal. It's very, very different. And we're all navigating that. All of us are navigating how that is developing over time. So thinking about training, thinking about upskilling, and then supporting employees' well-being. There are a lot of mental health issues which come at different moments. And being alert, I talk a lot about empathy and in my work, and it's really about human understanding, about recognizing the signals, like, is something off with Jane? I'm not sure. She was a little quiet, or maybe she didn't respond to your email as quickly. Thinking about those signals and checking in with people, making sure they're okay. But supporting, when we're dealing with the inflation that we're dealing with right now, and the costs, a lot of people are really not good at managing their money. Or they're just having real strain right now. So financial management lunch and learns. There are a bunch of companies I know in New York that do that to help people manage their finances better, which alleviates their stress. They can focus on their work and engage more in their work. So there are lots of things, there are benefits that don't necessarily cost much money, and you can find somebody who can come and do a lunch and learn, and there's some other trade-off that they can do for benefit. These things don't have to cost more money. Flexibility, being able to provide and support for your employees doesn't have to cost more money. It's much more of an attitude and an approach. And the last element is leaders. So we've been living in a different world. Leaders have been doing a lot of command and control, top down. And when things were stable and linear and projectable, and you could imagine doing the same thing for 10 years, that could work. But that's not where we are now. It takes too long to get the information from the front line, take it all the way up to the top, strategize, and then bring it down again and send it out to the front line. Now we have to bring more decision-making and sharing responsibility further down in the organization and out, so we can make timely decisions and respond to customers. That's what's necessary for your business. So it's more about coaching. I say we're going from commander to coach. Now that's a huge mindset shift for leaders. But in the end, the leaders don't, as leaders, bless you, you don't have all the answers. None of us do. And getting more understanding and more information and more inputs from everybody, so everybody participates in the solution, that's a better way. You're going to have many more people who are on board, who are ready to go and really engage in their work if you do that. and focus on results. That's the easiest way to stop people focusing on where people are. You can give them some direction about how to do it, not micromanaging, but if you focus on results, it's a kind of like, okay, is this person performing? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And if not, what help do they need? How can I help them do better work or do their best work? And focusing on results rather than seeing them in person. So a last story, I was on a plane actually, I was going to Europe, and I was sitting next to an American entrepreneur. He was sitting on the board of one of these electric scooter companies, but he was a serial entrepreneur. He'd launched and sold 2 or 3 companies already. He's probably in his 50s. And he was talking to me about the CEO of this company. And he said, I couldn't do what this guy had done. I couldn't have launched this company, which was launched in multiple countries at the same time, as a strategic decision, as a strategic competitive decision, in order to be able to sort of compete against the other electric scooter machines. He says, I couldn't have done that, but I could now. Now I've observed, by being on the board, now I've observed how he did it, how he managed to help people be connected. This was prior to the pandemic. Now I've seen how he did it, I could do it too. We can all learn. We've all learned an incredible amount over the last 2 years. And using that understanding about how flexibility works, what you're actually capable of, what the pivots you can do, how you can really work differently, and how you can engage employees, and asking them questions, because I'm sure you asked a lot of questions in terms of, what are we going to do now, of your team members. All those things we can do, and we can work differently and create a new how. Just share this. If you can't read it, it says, not accepting change, thanks. And somebody wrote back, change is inevitable. Deal with it. So when it comes down to what's next is up to you. But the changes that we need to make, it's a need. And it really is exciting. I think there are so many things. The rules that were written were not for us, not for this time. And we need to make enormous changes, but there's so much possibility, and I'm really excited for all of you. Thank you. Questions, please. Yes, sir.
So from my perspective, it's very clear. I worked in. Oh, thank you. Now I feel really fancy. From my perspective, it's really clear how this applies to like office workers and stuff. Can you help clarify how we can apply that to, let's say, more blue collar workers that
Sure.
are physically like service workers, let's say. So my employees go out to the field, they work one-on-one with a client every single day. Or manufacturing, I think, would be another great example that we could apply this to, of like, okay, there's people actually assembling something on a line where they physically have to be there to put the piece together every day. Can you help kind of interpret that a little bit for me?
Yes, certainly. So yes, a lot of what I was talking about there was focused more on sort of flexible working. But flexibility, what I've been focused on, in fact, for 11 years now, is workplace flexibility, which is the big umbrella. And that really is about giving flexibility to anybody to have a bit more control over their life. Like, as human beings, we want to have control. We do not want to be robots or feel like robots. So that flexibility can come in changing schedules or giving the control. I don't really like to use the word control, but giving the ability to manage their schedules. That can be one element of it. There are ways. There's a really interesting book, which I like to quote. It's actually quite an old book. It's called Maverick. And the guy who wrote it is called Ricardo Semler, who's Brazilian. And he took over his father's company at 21. And it was a big manufacturing company in Brazil. And he tried everything. He just kind of like came in and he was just like, let's just try different things. And one of the things that he did for people who are on the manufacturing floor is he gave a team the ability to set their own quota, to get whatever they were tasked to get done, however they wanted to do it. And they ended up sharing tasks. So they didn't end up doing, and I'm not saying it's necessarily what any particular team could do, but giving flexibility. They started sharing tasks and like, well, I don't want to just do one of these things because that gets really boring. But if we can, cover for each other and do different things, that's more interesting for me. One of the things I would say is ask people. Because I'm sure that there are people in your team that you're managing who have thought about different changes about how they could do things. And even if they don't have more flexibility, the fact that they've actually changed the thing for everybody, and been able to tweak it so that it's more kind of like how they would like to do it, and because they do the job every day and they know how to do it, how it could be improved, that will help feel them engaged, and that they have ownership in improving the outcome for their company.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No questions? This is so easy? You've all got it? All right, okay, well that's easy. Really, no questions. I mean, small, big organizations, I mean, it affects people in different ways. Yes?
Thank you so much for the information you've shared. It's been very helpful. I'm a big proponent of flexible work arrangements, having employees work from home where it makes sense and they can get the work done effectively. We have some resistance to employees working from home from leaders who feel that there's going to be a loss in culture, lost in building relationships with face-to-face interactions. What have you seen in other companies that helps balance those items out and you don't lose your culture?
Okay, so two things there. One is culture and two is relationships. So first of all, just in terms of relationships, thank you. In terms of relationships, did any of your relationships go backwards, or do you find over the last 2 years that you really leaned in and you have some much stronger relationships with some of the people you work with? Right? Right? It wasn't that you didn't have good relationships because maybe you're having virtual drinks over Zoom, whatever it was. It's not that we can't do it, but having a combination of in-person and online, the two things together are how we actually develop relationships. One of the things in terms of how I sort of think about the past, we used to have travel agents, right? And how many people really knew their travel agent really, really well, but you hardly ever saw them in person? You were talking to them on the phone about where you were going, what you were doing, and how their holiday was. Like, that's how you actually connect with people and develop relationships. So it's a combination of in-person, online. So you have to be more intentional about it because you're not just always in person. So that's one aspect of it. So I think we were talking last night about this in terms of sales, outgoing sales meetings. They don't all, HubSpot had this really interesting, did this interesting research which said that 63% of sales leaders find that virtual sales interactions are either as useful or as successful or more successful than in person. Now, that doesn't mean that in person goes away, but it means that it's in addition to. Now, the other piece you're talking about is culture. So culture really needs to be, you need to be very specific about it and really understand your culture. So I was just talking to somebody recently. I said, okay, what's your culture? And I said, oh, it's really, really strong culture. And I said, well, can you tell me what's your culture? She's like, oh, well, I don't know. It's like a really strong culture. I'm like, well, okay, great. And how about identifying what those are? And you can get a group together, again, across the organization to say, like, what are the 5, if you were going to tell somebody, what are the 5 things the reason that you should work at this company because it's this, and this, like that. Those are the things you can ask people and actually sort of really articulate it and sort of write it up and then live it. There's a bank. It's multi-European. It is that started off in Sweden, and they have really, really strong human-centric focused values. And they have a booklet. It's called Our Way. They have about 2,000 people in the UK, and I don't remember how many across Europe. But they have this booklet, and they live that culture all the time. It's right by their computers, by their desks. And first of all, they focus on customers first, and then everybody in the branches, and then head office. Everybody else is third. And they have a very strong culture. And what they do in some of the branches is they pick one of the values in a week. And then by the end of the week, they talk about how they all live that particular value that week. So they really live it on a daily basis. And leaders need to set the example. Let's say trust is one of the values you have. And sort of timeless values are really helpful, particularly now, because they really anchor people when there's so much change going on. But let's say trust is, you need to be showing as leaders and talking about trust and showing trust to people and then sort of saying, yes, because I trust you, let's do that. So you're really living and making sure that people really know and understand the culture. And that helps connect people, because culture is something that we have kind of taken for granted, I think. And now this is something we really need to be very specific about. And it really does. I mean, there are companies that are totally virtual and stay totally virtual, and they have very strong cultures, and it's the culture that keeps them connected and knowing that they're all part of the same community. So it is something that does need to be so very proactively leaned into and understood and articulated, and that's going to help people stay connected. But it is something that does need to be done in order when you have people working, across many different. But I mean, it's the same case as if you have multiple office locations, where the people are by themselves at home or in different remote offices. That's still the same case. You need to try and connect people. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm with the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
And, I work with young people. And I recently left working in public education because they weren't adapting, as you're describing. And so I work now, it's more flexible, but being able to be innovative working with the teens. So have you seen any examples of companies, how they engage with the future workforce or with families, and how that dynamic has shifted, or anything of that nature?
In terms of?
In terms of how, like, because you have, for example, like we have the opportunity to take children on tours of companies. They have opened their doors because children can't see, they can't be what they can't see.
Right.
And so, and even in people saying they're struggling finding people to work. Mm-hmm. And this next generation, and how post-COVID, how kids are tied to devices. Have you seen any examples of how companies are engaging the future workforce as they adapt to this new normal?
Yes, I mean, I think there are a lot of changes that need to happen in education, and I know that there are more. I mean, we have Purdue University Northwest, which is fantastic, because the sort of backward integration and sort of forward integration of corporations working with universities to understand what they need to do for the universities. Next week, I'm actually speaking at a business school, to the business school, they're just about to graduate, in order to help them understand the workforce that they're going into. But helping the students understand what to anticipate, and the fact that their learning doesn't stop when they leave school. I mean, it stopped when they left college before, but it's not going to anymore. Like, this is the lifelong learning. The statistic that I say is that the half-life of skills, which is the amount of time it takes for the skill to become half as valuable, used to be 10 years. Now it's 5. And technical skills can be as little as 2.5 years. If you think about it, you just go from C+ to Python, and now whatever it is next. I mean, these things keep moving on. So sort of understanding and appreciating lifelong learning, that's something that the students can be sort of made aware of. But having corporations visit the schools and talk to them about what the possibilities are, and really starting to engage them in terms of how they're looking at the workforce and how the possibilities for them, so that they can really connect with them. And there are more relationships between corporations in terms of understanding how people, the kinds of jobs that they're going to be offering, and what those possibilities mean for them in the future. So there's a lot more of that needs to happen. And also, university courses that are helping people, that are more sort of focused on some of the workplace tasks. There's a lot more critical thinking that's needed, and problem solving. The workplace is, needing us to really think a lot more and a lot more deeply. And that's some of the things that we can be helping kids with in schools and colleges as well. Yes, ma'am.
Now, on the flip side, what do you do with the older generation who's stuck in the old school, 8 to 5, and you're here every day, and we don't want to change our culture because it's worked all these years? How do we get through to that generation?
Did it work all these years? No, seriously. I mean, so So I think sharing the benefits of, particularly, I mean, one of the problems we've had is that there are lots of organizations where if you retire, it falls off a cliff. You go from 100% or 200% to zero. Like, that's not healthy for anybody. And you're going to, if you want to stay engaged, and people's identities are very tied to their work. But if you can change what that looks and feels like, and you can allow them to work part-time or work on a consulting basis so that they can phase out, but still stay engaged, play a bit more golf, have time with their grandkids. Those are things that some of the most senior, so that it helps people that the expertise is really valuable. And there are a lot of people more people are retiring. Then we had 3.5 million more people retiring over the last 2 years than normal, because a lot of people are sort of saying, I don't want to deal with this much change. It's just like enough. I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to do something different. Or it's just they've had a chance to sort of say, well, life is. I want to value life, and I'm spending too much time in the office. So trying to lean into some of those changes and sort of say, how can those people be working differently and taking advantage of changes? But also the productivity. I mean, some of the things that the engagement is what we really need, and how people, like, trialing it out, just sort of say, well, let's just try this out and see how it goes. And if you're focused on results, then if the results stay, and the results go up, and even the results increase, then why would we not do that? Because it's going to help with retention. But one of the key pain points is also, if you can't hire people, if you can't engage people, and you can't retain people, that is a critical pain point that I see in lots of organizations that's forcing them to change and become more flexible. Because if you can't hire people, the young people, that's going to be the biggest problem. Because if your competitor is, and you don't. Yes?
So the workforce issue is a global one, right?
Yes.
It's not just happening in Northwest Indiana. It's happening across the U.S., across the world.
Yes.
So, and obviously all of us are striving to be the best place to work. Mm-hmm. But again, that's a winners and losers opportunity. So
yes.
How do you see workforce trending, and what things do you think that we need to be prepared for as there are fewer and fewer people to fulfill many of these jobs?
So for knowledge type tasks, if you're able to adjust for some people being fully remote, your ability to hire people across the country or across the world opens up. You're no longer dealing with a fixed local workforce. Not necessarily on a full-time, long-term basis, but for projects, for specific projects. But you can also be hiring people in any state. There are employment rules, and some of it gets a little bit complicated, so it's not it needs to be done thoughtfully. But it does open up many, many more people who you have access to be able to work for your organization. I do see there being winners and losers, yes. Because companies that don't adapt are going to find it very hard to retain people. Because when I show that picture of, like, workplaces were suboptimal, they really were. I mean, we have people who are really not engaged in their work because they are either stressed about their finances, they are continually thinking about how they're going to deal with their elderly parents or whatever. There are lots and lots of non-work issues that were causing people to not be engaged in their work. There's Gallup data which shows that if you orient people towards their skills and strengths, your revenues go up and your profits go up by more than 10%. It was like 14 or something going up to 29%. Huge, just orienting people towards their skills and strength. Now, how many people, this is the interesting question, how many people in this room know what their top 3 skills are? Very few. It's very few. And this is typical. I mean, I ask this question because I know that the answer, nobody has the answer. Like, we need to know what our skills are. And it comes from not just asking yourself, but asking other people around you to kind of go, oh, she's fantastic. She's really detail-oriented. I mean, and on a team, you can actually have... right. No, it says that. Okay, so they're not going to make you the project manager. Fine. But the point is like when you're working on a team, you can actually allocate tasks a little differently so that people are doing what they enjoy best and what they find easiest, Why not? You can be sharing it. I was actually doing a radio interview yesterday, and the guy said, well, aren't there companies who are trying to craft the jobs around the person rather than, and to their skills? That's a really good thing to do. Because if I put you towards something which involves kind of project management, it's not going to go so well, right? Well, maybe. I'm sure you'll be determined to get it done. But the point is like when we actually focus people on what they're good at and what they can do really well, you will actually have people, the outcomes will be so much better in all kinds of ways. So when we can think about those and we can think about skills orientation and strengths, that we can really change the dynamics without having to do anything, without having to spend any money on any technology or anything. And there are lots of free technologies to use, so the cost for flexibility do not have to be anything, in fact, in some cases. So I do see the trends being that there will be a bunch of companies that have a real struggle, and that will be companies who really take this on board, and we can see those companies who are really engaging and changing their culture and being extremely flexible. They have some of the best talent there who are really engaged and outperforming. And it's everybody else in the middle. So where you are, and it is, look, it doesn't have to be like huge, trains from one day to the next. You can be done, but particularly if you're working with employees and you're saying like, this is where we're trying to get to, give us your ideas, and let's see how we can get there. That will already help employees stay because that they know that you're going in the right direction, that you have the intention to change things. And nobody's going to have all the flexibility that they want, necessarily. And a lot of people don't know what kind of flexibility they want. That you kind of like need to help them understand that. But if they know that you're going in the right direction, your attention is good, they will, people don't want to leave, unless they really, really want to have a completely different life. So if they'll say, okay, we're going to try and get there, let's try and work on it, and over time, we're going to try and implement flexibility, you will find that people want to stay and be part of a better company, a better outcome, and that they can be living a better life. Do we have any time for any more questions? Any more questions, anybody? Oh, yes.
With how WorkPlace shifted to being more virtual or remote, do you find that burnout has become more prevalent?
Okay, so I'm so glad you said that, because who really loves meetings? Okay, so the issue is meetings. The issue is meetings. How many people last week, what day was Thursday, how many people this week attended at least 5 meetings that they really didn't need to be at? Okay, if you're with your boss, you don't have to put your hand up. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Okay, all right. But the point is that there are lots and lots of, so there are lots and lots of, from I think 1970 to I think 2012 or something, we went from 10 hours of meetings a week to 23 hours of meetings a week. And I think it's actually much more than that. I mean, the last time I worked in a big organization, it's like endless hours, and you don't have to be there. So let me give you a couple of examples. One example is, now, this is a young guy, and he started a company which helps people who want to, it's a technology to help people with remote working, so that, or hybrid stuff, so you can see who's going to be in the office. You can actually follow someone kind of like, oh, I really want to be in the office when Margie's there. So it tells you Margie's going to be in the office on Tuesdays, and so you can go on Tuesday. But talking to him, he said, we record every meeting. They video record it, and there's a transcript, and it's word searchable. So if I know that that's going to happen, I'm not going to feel excluded if I'm not in the meeting. And they sort of say, okay, fine, you 3 really need to be at the meeting. Here's the, there is going to be this meeting, and you can find out about it, but you can search it afterwards. I don't need to be there. So being purposeful about having an agenda for your meeting and having a protocol and making sure you know what the outcomes are supposed to be, all of those things. But also, if you are going to, you could record it. It doesn't have to be on video. There's a great one called Headroom, anyway, that records it, has a transcript and has video, and you can search through video and see the points there. There are lots of new technologies that are allowing people to work in different ways, which reduces burnout. Because burnout, people were hating meetings before. Then you put them all on Zoom, and you get Zoom burnout. Because the point was, and yes, you have to concentrate more, and there's a little box and all the rest of it, but the point was, it was too many meetings. And so this is the how. This is the how, which Lisa, as I said, really, in terms of what the Center for Workforce Innovations can help you with, one of the things is just how. Because when we are thoughtful about how we're working and who needs to be in meetings and how many meetings we need to have, I was also talking to this guy from Atlassian, and he said, I said to every single person that I was having a meeting with the next 2 weeks, why am I going to be there? What's my role? What's my purpose? And what do you want from me? And he said, like, 80% of the meetings disappeared. And in fact, another part of it is he said, he found out that in a particular meeting, they were asking for him to come in and be the decision maker. He thought, because he's a really sort of creative ideas guy, he thought he was coming in to be the kind of like ideas guy. So he was coming and sort of making everything really energetic and thinking about all these ideas, completely hopeless for the meeting, because what they were looking for him is direction and an outcome. So now he goes into meeting, he knows exactly why he's there, what his role is, what his purpose is, and he actually said in that particular meeting environment, he helped them, he facilitated it, and really beneficial, particularly virtual meetings, but any meeting is best when you have a facilitator there, which he would play that role of, in order to make sure that they were helping them make the decisions, as the leader, helping them make the decisions. And so that will be a huge part of changing the situation with burnout. Thank you very much for that question. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm with Ivy Tech School of Nursing, and there's a lot of healthcare providers in this room. And everything that you discuss, I understand. Any suggestions specific to retaining, recruiting healthcare providers and keeping them within the workforce, specifically healthcare?
May I ask, what type of flexibility about their schedule do nurses have?
Depending on the organization. And
Right.
I think hospitals, I'm in education, but some of the hospitals are providing more flexibility. But when you talk about it doesn't have to cost, that's the difference with healthcare that we're seeing with nurses, is they're leaving constantly because of the high salaries that they're getting at other places. So retaining nurses is difficult because it is a salary decision a lot of the time.
Yes, but particularly with younger people, the data really supports this. It's really not just about money, because you can keep jumping and keep having a salary increase, but you still want to work somewhere where you feel part of the community, you feel connected, you like the people you're working with. And so, but flexibility is one of the key things that I know with nurses, and flexibility over schedules. So I know that Aetna, this is probably 5 years ago now, they were giving nurses the ability to set their schedules on 3 weeks at a time. So then they could also, the next group, then I have certain needs, or I'm going away, and who's going to cover for me? So they could do it, they could work on it themselves, and they had some more autonomy about how they were organizing their schedule. So again, I think there are things that can be done, which can also be asked of the professionals. And I know, talking to somebody in healthcare, and he was telling me that and he has friends who are doctors in the UK who are just saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, doctors get paid very, very little in the UK. But there are ways to focus people on the specific work that they're doing according to their skills. And I know that there are health professionals who are sometimes doing work now, which has a lot to do, maybe to do with a lot more data inputting, which they don't feel comfortable with, and they don't feel that that's their strength. And maybe there are other people who can be focused on that rather than them, and they can be focused on specifically just, doing their, diagnosis or whatever that might be. So I think there are lots of questions that can be asked of people who are doing those jobs to see what ideas that they have. Because it's very hard without knowing the specifics to be able to suggest what type of flexibility will matter to people. Because it could be half an hour change in the time. It could be participating in changing how things are set up. It could be how the hospital is set up. I mean, there are lots of things that they haven't had any control over, any ability to make a difference, because it's like that's how it's been done for a long time. And just giving them more ability to participate and contribute will make a difference. You're very welcome. Anything else? So easy, right? So next week?
Thank you, Sophie. That was amazing. I felt like I was creeping up on you up here on stage.
No, I didn't see you. I didn't see you.
Thank you. Really amazing. And I'm glad you asked that question that you asked. Number one, because it gets an opportunity to reinforce, because I learned this from Sophie, just ask. Please. But we have Sophie is coming back, not physically to the region, but she is going to be facilitating a Zoom cafe. You should have this on your flyer, May 19th, that is specific to healthcare. Now, I would argue it should be employers, educators, and even if your business is set up something like healthcare,
Yep.
there's benefit to you in
Whether
that.
a lot of fixed on-site jobs. And the idea about this is to be asked very specific questions so that we can go into more detail about and brainstorm about some of these ideas.
So now you have time, or employers have time, to go ask the people that are either connected to others that are leaving, like what would it take?
Absolutely.
For the conversation for May, right? So we can do some homework, and then pose share some of the responses that you get, and Sophie can help you brainstorm.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And when that information goes out for the healthcare Zoom cafe, you'll all get that by the end of the day today or by tomorrow. We can even, once you register, we can ask you for some questions that you might have.
Yeah, great.
Maybe two issues that you're struggling with, or questions
Yeah, good idea, Barb.
in advance.
So Sophie mentioned her book that's just coming out, right?
Yes,
It just
these are actually, it hasn't just broken, it's breaking on May 3rd. So these
Oh,
are
look at
copies
that.
that are not available. You can pre-order it online, but these are actually ahead of that.
Yeah, fabulous. So we have some available. We're going to raffle off 10 now, but we have more available if you're interested. Sophie, are you available to maybe sign those, or do you have
Yes,
to run?
yes, no, I have
Okay,
some
so
seven.
we're going to give 10 away right now.
Okay, there you go.
Do you want to
Yes.
choose? You received raffle tickets when you walked in.
I'll give you 10.
You can, thank you. You can get your, don't leave me though, because I have closing comments. Don't leave me. Don't leave. I promise. Barb promised me this would be fast. And I just have a couple of things. All right, 807-574. 807-574. 807-624. 624. 807-597. 597. 807-588. 588. See, we're halfway through already. All right, I guess all the numbers are 807, so we don't need to keep repeating that. 572. 572. That's half of them. 569. 569. Ooh, 570. What are the odds? 570. 598. 598. 623.
There we go.
623. And 554. 554. All right. So you're guaranteed books. The remaining will be on a first come, first serve basis out at the registration table, Barb. Okay, fabulous. Can we just give Sophie one more round of applause? Thank you. Am I right? Can you listen to her all day? Yeah. And it was amazing that she handled so many questions, right? A lot of speakers don't always have that ability to pivot and respond. So we mentioned flyers that you received on upcoming topics, formats. Again, the intention is to give you a variety of experiences focused on different issues. Next Gen Expo is all about youth, getting them connected to employers, resources, et cetera. A couple of phenomenal speakers, some specific to healthcare, manufacturing, et cetera. You have the list. I'm not going to go through all those. Just know that we have found some great speakers for each of those. You're also going to have an opportunity in, later in the series to connect with us about resources that are available to you, as well as you know, recruitment. Boy, when I was at the Times, we used to sell print ads. And, you know, the Sunday paper was this big, and half of that was the recruitment section, right? There was like one place to go in print to find jobs, and now it's really fragmented. But the Times has so many different very affordable ways to digitally tap into these audience and share that message. The gig economy, you're not going to want to miss that one. I can't remember off the top of my head when that's scheduled, but it is fascinating to hear how people they want to come in and out. They don't want to do the same job every day, all day, in and out. And if, as an employer, you can find ways, you know, to provide that experience, you're going to capture a lot of new people. And there are platforms that can help you do that. So more to come on that. All right, diversity and inclusion event in September. That is such an important issue for your organizations to really tackle the right way. So we'll have phenomenal speakers there too. All right, here's my ask of you today. Share the series information. This room, we have dozens of people in the room. We should have hundreds of people in the room, right? And we should have bosses in the room, right? CEOs. So share this with your boss, with your boss's boss, with your families and friends' bosses, right? Let's get them in the room. Now, I didn't think of this until today, but we're going to be capturing highlights of today's event and trying to bring more people in with that. But for those of you who are here already, we will be willing to share the recorded version of this if you want to share that with folks who you think need to hear it. Okay, so does that help? Fabulous. All right, spread the word. We need so many more, as a community, we need so many more of our employers hearing this and making Northwest Indiana a great place to work. Thank you so very much for being here.